The difference between good and bad debt remains one of the major challenges facing consumers in South Africa. That's as scores are still battling the rise in the cost of living while striving to meet financial needs and separate the wants. JustMoney.co.za's Sarah Nicholson speaks to us about these dynamics. Good morning, Sarah. Interesting times to be talking about the differences between good and bad debt. While the one is seen as an investment, the other is looked at as a burden. Let's unpack and clarify the distinction between the two.
Absolutely. Understanding and managing your debt is so crucial for your long-term financial well-being, and it can really significantly impact your ability to save and invest and achieve financial goals. And as we head into 2024, it's really important that we take time to understand the difference between the two, and I think you touched on it quite nicely now. But good debt basically means borrowing money to invest in assets that actually have the potential to increase in value or generate an income. And some examples of good debt would include student loan, where you invest in education, your own education, which could increase your earning potential and long-term career opportunities, or even business loans, borrowing to start or expand a business, which could also help to increase your personal wealth and profitability. If we look at bad debt is incurred for purchases that don't contribute to wealth building and don't provide long-term value. Examples of bad debt could be credit card debt, accumulating credit card debt for non-essential purchases, but not paying it off at the end of the month, or lifestyle loans. We've just come out of December. It's been a challenging time, a wonderful time, but it can be challenging as we spend extra on gifts and creating special memories. But taking out loans for items with no lasting value could potentially lead down a debt rabbit hole.
I'm glad that you raised the festive season spending. Consumers have been cash-strapped, and with the festive season, we tend to be slightly more optimistic, and our sentiment is towards plugging the gaps that may exist within the household, or making family members find a little bit of joy, and that then becomes quite easy for the lines to be blurred when it comes to bad and good debt. What's to be said about the education that consumers have at their disposal, where we are seeing a change in trends? Most of the reports that we got towards the latter part of last year were indicating that South African consumers are basically staying away from big ticket items.
Absolutely. It's a challenging time now, and I think people are starting to realize the importance of being smarter with their money. There is still a need for education around this. And if we look at the Q3 2023, we do see that there was an increased demand from consumers for debt management, with debt counseling inquiries up by 28% and online debt management up by 65% compared to the same period last year. And if we look compared to 2016, those consumers who applied for debt counseling in third quarter of 2023 ended up having 40% less purchasing power. They also had higher debt service burdens of about 63% of net incomes going towards paying their debt. And there were also unsustainably high levels of unsecured debt, where unsecured debt levels were on average 21% higher than that in 2016. So as things get harder and interest rates rise, debt levels are increasing. And it's an important time to really understand the difference between the two, understanding the difference between your wants and needs, so that when you are making financial decisions, you're doing it with your long-term financial health in mind.
On that point, let's talk about the harsh impacts in the long run of bad debt, given that it may actually dent your credit score.
Absolutely. It's so important that you do understand your credit score and how taking out bad debt can affect it. It really is a crucial factor in managing your debt. And if there is something like wanting to get a business loan or a student loan, or even a home loan, if your credit score is impacted by previous bad debt, it will unfortunately have an impact, as the lenders use the credit score to decide whether you're a low-risk or a high-risk borrower. And then we often find that, as I said, using credit can be unavoidable, and being able to obtain a loan or bond can really make a difference to your lifestyle. So if you want to obtain a loan at a more favorable interest rate, it's important that you take note of the difference between the two. And really, by having a better interest rate, it could really save thousands of rands over the payback period when you do need to make use of credit and debt.
And how easy is it to get out of that danger zone if you've been flagged as a high-risk borrower?
It does take a little bit of work. It's not incredibly challenging, but it would be important that whatever credit you do have, you pay consistently. You pay it off consistently every single month. That has a huge impact on your credit score. And if you find that you are in a situation where you're potentially not able to pay your debt, it's rather than avoiding the issue, get hold of your your creditor, your banks, have a conversation with them and try and solve whatever you're struggling with much sooner rather than later, so that you don't impact or you have as little impact on your credit score as possible.
As a parting shot, to what extent then does good debt give you at least leverage when it comes to being attractive?
Absolutely. So the banks use your payment behavior to have a look at, if you're a high risk or low risk. And if you are actually making payments on a regular basis, and it's good credit and your debt to income ratio is not too high, then it will start helping to increase your credit score. A good example is if you don't have a credit score and you take out an account and pay that on a monthly basis, your credit score will start going up. So it will have a good impact on that number.
Thank you so much for your insights. As always, that's Sarah Nicholson. She's from justmoney.co.za. This time around on the business desk, talking us through the difference between good and bad debt.